This is Critical Nonsense, our high-low-brow show about culture, science, and tech. This week, Aaron asks us about the next music solo.
Woo! I am an idiot walking a tightrope of fortune and fame. This is what Joey sounds like.
I wanna run to you, ooh, but if I come to you, ooh, that's what an Aaron sounds like today.
Wow.
But like off pitch, out of key.
And this is what an executive producer swinging through circles of flame, Jess Vander, sounds like.
Hi, this is Jess.
Not even like a whoosh, whoosh. Like I just sound effects.
Flames, circles.
Yes.
Flames in circles.
Flames in circles. And I'm sorry. I was going to get down.
Flames are in circles.
Do we have housekeeping? What are our recent topics? I felt like there was something that we spoke about that we said, oh yeah, we should address that in housekeeping, but then, as things are wont to do.
Well, precisely. I was going to say, I mean, let's put it in the closet and then check on it when we remember to check it out.
Largely, there have been a number of corrections departments courtesy of our programmer-in-chief, Leslie Jacobs, several of them which you can find in the show notes. For instance, a blue whale's heart isn't actually the size of a Volkswagen Beetle. It's almost by all measurements smaller than that and weighs less than that.
Screw you, Snapple Cap.
I know. And then something about reinforcement learning from human feedback. Training, what in my head immediately sounds kind of like some scientific experiment, but I think it seems it's related to ELO scores. Goodness, we're really gonna have to.
ELO scores are the scores for like chess ranking
and dating apps and stuff. Yeah, we're gonna have to. We're gonna have to bring Les on to tell us all of the things that we got wrong. But look, we say things that we get wrong all the time on this show, and that is why we have a corrections department. Because
that's why we share links in the show notes.
This is true.
And you can just tell us when we're wrong. Just send us a note at criticalnonsense@sylvain.co and say, Joey or Jess or Aaron, but less likely Aaron, you're wrong.
I don't know. I'm pretty wrong a lot. Let's just be real.
And we will just see.
Yes. So I guess, am I the one that has a thing?
I remembered one. It was not a corrections department. It was a supplement. There was a really good podcast on plain English with Derek Thompson that covered some of the questions relating to achievement and success that we spoke about a few weeks ago. We can drop that in. It's a nice conversation with experts around achievement and success in teenagers and why teenagers in Western countries are less happy than adults in Western countries because we're foisting too much on them. Too many petards.
We need to stop petarding and the foisting. Both. Immediately stop them.
At least one. We can keep the petarding, but no more foisting, I say.
No more foisting.
Aaron, drop your query.
Y'all ready for this? It's gonna be Well, I mean, yeah. I was gonna do a whole joke about like dropping it, Jess, but like you made it cooler. But it's cool. No, it's fine. The moment is past.
So sorry. I was just yes-anding.
Right.
Right. Drop the beat.
But I also want to say that, like, Jess, you are not wrong for yes-anding with me. Oh, I did. I was trying to do it again, Joey. Damn it. These contextual jokes. I do.
friendships and collaboration, you dropped it, and as soon as you dropped it, Jess caught it and was
That's
like,
right.
"Don't! Oh, you dropped this. Sorry, I picked it up for you."
Oh, hey, did you mean to drop this?
Yes, Jess, you must have wings because you are the flying buttress that supports us all.
Flying mattresses.
I definitely heard flying mattresses, which
Yeah, that's what she said.
oh, that's great. Okay,
What buttresses?
okay. I heard
No,
mattress.
The buttress. This was the whole. This is an Aaron reprise.
I really want a flying mattress. I mean, Jess, I thought what you said was right. I'm sorry. I've mangled this. Let's get right back on him. So I do have a phenomenon that I would like to explore with you. And
And like a phenomenon.
oh shoot. All right now. So LL Cool J. So we spend a lot of time talking about very heavy, deep, robust philosophical thoughts. And I think that this definitely rises to that occasion. It's really the critical of the nonsense, I would say.
I would too.
And this has to do with music, pop music. So can I just spin you a quick yarn to set this up real
Please.
quick?
Mm-hmm.
So I woke up this morning and I had a dream last night that involved Dolly Parton. I don't remember anything,
Okay.
but I remember waking up and having to listen to I Will Always Love You. And truly, because I dreamed about this so much, I was like, well, I'm already tired of the Dolly version because that's what I heard in my dream all night last night. So let me put on the Whitney version. And there are certain songs that we're saturated with, so it's who really presses play on I Will Always Love You on their own accord? Usually it's going to show up at a wedding or somewhere where you didn't ask for it, but everybody knows that you're doing it. And it's really powerful to listen to that song because of one particular phenomenon that really stood out to me, which was the jazz sax solo that's in the middle of it. Because I can remember every riff, every run, every note, every moment of that entire song. And much like I'm sure everybody else does, as I'm eating my overnight oats, was doing a hand saxophone, in the middle of it. Just the fingers are moving around as though we are all playing saxophones live. And I fell down a pop music rabbit hole over my breakfast, which really made me think about these jazz sax solos and these harmonica solos that have popped up in the 90s. Or, of course, it's perhaps
We'll bring you back.
Oh, wow. It's hard to say what I see in you, Joey. Different band, same time frame, wanted to just sort of harmonicas about.
Basically the same band.
Yeah. And so there's also, of course, the mainstay, the guitar solo. The guitar solo is something that's been around in pop music for very, very long time, and it's been a mainstay. But I guess I see these as these production music chapters and phenomena that have happened where we saw just a shit ton of harmonica solos all at once from Alanis Morissette and Sister Hazel and just all these people all at once. And then you just don't hear a harmonica solo in a pop song ever. It's just
again.
Poof, gone. It's the harmonica didn't
We're
exist
done
in
with
pop again.
harmonicas now.
It's out of here. 10,000 Maniacs, more like
Blues Traveler
zero.
Erasure.
Thank you. I really couldn't remember Blues Traveler's name. It was bothering me. And so really this takes me to my question that I have for you. What do you think is going to be the next musical instrument solo in pop music?
This is challenging because so much stuff has become digitized. I'd heard an interview with what's his name, Jason
Derulo.
Hold on.
I appreciate that you tried to sing it, and I was like,
Yes, you should have. It was good.
Derulo.
Actually,
Jason Isbell.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he has on HBO. They have the Music Box series, and there's one coming out about him right now. And Bill Simmons interviewed him and asked him, why do you think you travel with a band, you work with a band, you've been together a long time, you were in a band before that. Why do you think bands are going away? And he was just like, it's a lot. easier when you just make the music by yourself and you don't have to listen to anyone. It doesn't necessarily make the music better, but you know, it's also cheaper when you're just doing it by yourself and all these other things. And so much of that, right, the digitization, which in many ways is good, it democratizes music. It's given us artists that have, you know, risen to like even world stages that were able to produce independent music. But at the same time, you're not getting that person where you're like, all right, we're making an album and Mike needs a solo on one of these songs, or like Sharon needs to like really like strum at the keyboards and get her one solo on this track or whatever it is. And so like even in that component of, you have a bunch of like talented musicians working together, and you're sort of creating some opportunity for each of them to shine over the course of an album. Like it feels like it could as much be about human dynamics of like the act of making music, of these people are playing together, and you know, you can do those things intentionally, right? Like I don't know why the saxophone solo in Careless Whisper showed up, whether it was, you know, George Michael just really loved saxophone, or it was the effect he was trying to go for, or there was like a studio musician that was like, hey man, like I picked your dog up from the airport, like can I just get like a solo on this album? And George Michael's like, ah shit, you're right, he did, you did that, so
you did it.
I gotcha.
I mean, I have thoughts, but Jess, I guess when I think about our ukulele intro, right? Like we really thought about what that's going to stand out for, and I really thought it was going to be the centerpiece of us being sampled in pop music. I just wanted to call that out. There's still time, and Jess deserves music credit. I think you're onto something, not just about the creation of music being more solo, but specifically in the digitization of music, specifically where the art of how it translates into live music as well. So like digitization of music really meant that we were looping stuff so much more, and there was a greater reliance on sampling as well. And this has been both the digitization and the impact of hip hop, like both of them creating two dynamics. One being that we're looping more content, and we're creating song structures in pop music that I think in general are hewing toward the more simple, like A, B, A, B, C, A, B structure. But then also, we've got incredible lyrical density in our pop music now. Like there tend to be more syllables, and I have no data to support this. This is completely observational. But the lyrical density, the syllabic density, perhaps more specifically, of songs means that we are in pop music listening more to like words and talking and the singer that is at the front of the song, as opposed to thinking about the full texture. And then the way that plays out in live music experiences too, the digitization of like, it's not as often that it's about the musicianship of pop musicians. It's about the experience that they're creating all around them. Like the Instagramification of the live concert means that like, do you really want to be like, how much time are you really investing on like giving a guitarist a solo and like shredding it really hard versus doing some additional thing with lights and the screens that you have in the room and doing more storytelling in the middle of your concert? And I think all those things lead to, rather than making more space for those feature moments, actually just squeezing it all out and making music more of like a platform for a vocalist in pop music, as opposed to the like coagulation of musicianship of different performers.
See, this is interesting because I was recently catching up on episodes of Switched on Pop, one of my favorite podcasts, as I've talked about on this show before. And I don't know if either of you or anyone listening has heard the episode about this like sound taking over indie folk, where this guy, Ruben Cox, of Old Style Guitar Shop, located outside of LA or in LA, made like a slapdash kind of guitar of like a bunch of pieces and parts, trying to start this guitar shop, and ended up connecting, I think it was like with Andrew Bird, and like ultimately everyone was like, oh my goodness, this is like the most unique thing. I've never heard this sound. Like, it's such a unique sound. I want this. Like, I want to capture this sound. And so now it's all over the different albums of artists you've probably heard, like, of course, Taylor Swift's latest album, record, whatever you're supposed to call it, Phoebe Bridgers, Olivia Rodrigo, anyway, all these different artists. And it's really interesting because this is entirely about the musicianship in a way, or like harnessing a unique sound, as opposed to trying, to make it like, it's almost in my mind like the nerding out side of what could potentially fill that maybe not necessarily solo space, but like trying to make your music unique, which is kind of interesting and a different way of thinking about things. I don't know. What do you think?
It's funny because there's like forces pushing towards like more interesting things, like you're talking about, Jess, right? Of like the invention of new sounds, or like even some, like the sort of identifying markers of different genres has expanded, and things like that are sort of pushing towards unique sounds, and people trying to make an interesting thing in a like quite saturated marketplace that is moving faster. And then simultaneously, though, like some of the things you were talking about, Aaron, right? Because acts are solo, there's an increase in the orientation that you can't just be the music, that you have to be like a brand, that you have to be an influencer persona, that you're contending with the streaming marketplace. There's like some studies that came out, apparently, I like pulled up because I was like, I feel, as you were talking, I was like, I feel like songs are also getting shorter, which is taking away from the opportunity to even insert a solo somewhere. And there are a bunch of studies saying like from 2013 to 2018, the average song on the Billboard Hot 100 was 3 minutes and 50 seconds. And by like 2022, it's under 3 minutes, which is like 25% reduction in the length of a song. Like you just took the solo out of that song.
That's like the effect of streaming, right? Of like the more plays.
Yep.
Yeah.
There's something also that you said, Joey, that struck me, which is about these identifying markers of genres, like the identifying sonic markers of genres, where if I think about it, I guess it takes me in two different directions. One is about the type of like featured acts that tended to be in songs in the past. And maybe I'm just thinking of a really like top of mind example is Slash being on Beat It. Like, it wasn't just that there was a guitar solo on Beat It, it's that it was fucking Slash. And so there's something really,
I can hear it right now.
Yes. And that like thun, 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 like when he's plugging in the guitar or whatever, and then it's amazing. Or you think about as well bands that were rooted in a specific genre. So like Freebird, like I don't know, like you've got lots of different bands that functionally are built around guitar sounds, and so a solo makes sense. Blues Traveler had a harmonica, like a harmonicist, harmonicist.
John Hopper, I think.
I'm gonna let you Google that before I agree too quickly, because I think that's right, but I don't want to end up in the corrections department this week because now I've got a high.
Sorry, I shouldn't have done it. Why did I say it?
Yes,
John Hopper.
I was right in thinking that it was wrong. I am invincible. So I also think that those were really rooted in creating identifiable sonic markers based on the musicians that are a part of the band,
like a steel guitar, or
yes. And so those like And then also there was, a consolidation of producers as well, because I think we all have talked about, I think we've even talked about here when we were talking about Media Twins. Like, you can talk about Pharrell. When Pharrell was producing stuff, like, he has chord progressions that make songs NERD or Pharrell songs. It's that whole stretch is like, yep, that's them. Similarly, Timbaland, like the way he uses samples, a Timbaland song when you hear it. Kanye back in the day, you knew a Kanye song and how he was going to speed up the sample and make it all squeaky Alvin and the Chipmunks voice. And so you have these like breakthrough moments that actually happened that I think led to more of this, like, you want atmospheric markers within pop to bring people's ears in to listen more. And that's increasingly rooted in like not instruments that are not of this world, or instruments that are so either digitized and manipulated that they create a pad or like a sonic signal, as opposed to actually being about the spotlight of someone creating that in the moment live. It's about overproducing it, and the work is done before it's performed.
It also feels like there was an embrace of emotion in a different way, in a wider spectrum of emotion in a different way, and like, not as like the kids today, and like I'm truly not doing that thing. Like, there's music today that I love and find new songs all the time, but there was a different approach to it, where today it feels much more about vibes, and that includes the artists themselves as being part of it. Like Ice Spice is vibes, right? Like, it's not like she has like amazing bars, and it's not like the beat goes that hard. It's just like you're just like, I dig your vibe. Like, she has like an amount of swagger and a thing that she's putting out in the world that people are like, sick. Like, this fits into TikTok super well, and but that so often the solos were a way of like keying in on a specific emotion and amplifying it. And I do think there has been some instances that you can point to where people are finding other ways to create solo opportunities. As I think we've spoken about this on the show before, but there's a whole article written at one point about Kid Cudi's keening, where he's just like making these sounds, and someone had like gone deep analyzing keening and like why people are like really getting into him, because it is just like this visceral expulsion of an emotional state as a way, because he maybe can't play like a guitar or whatever. It's not the way he makes his music, right? He's singing and rapping, and then he's just making these like keening sounds.
What is that?
What is keening? Like, I'm not going to try to do it because it'll sound so bad. The action of wailing in grief for a dead person, prolonged and high pitched, typically in a way that expresses grief or sorrow. He's just making these sort of like songs like in his like throat and chest that are sort of like long sounds, where it's sort of like a release valve of like the emotional state that he's sort of capturing in the songs, as a way to like have these solos almost in between the verses. But like, and I'm sure there are like other cool ones, but so much of like the mainstream music, I think, has moved away from that, right? That sort of like vulnerable expression of what's going on in like, because you don't want to like seem weak, or you don't want to like talk about a thing that makes you feel like you're going to have future conversations about it. So it is much more of like building a facade for artists in a lot of pop music, and not all of it, but nonetheless.
You hit on something that made my neurons go pick, wow, which is a few things. One is that a lot of this like voice as texture, or using sound and then reshaping it, is again this sort of consequence of the digitization of music and self-production, and being able to like not being able to, or not needing to have to be a musician in the traditional sense, or being like a guitarist or a trumpet player or something like that, to be able to make great music and to close the gap between the imagination in your mind, which is likely drenched in emotion, and what people feel and hear. And I was thinking about this in a few different ways, because you mentioned this, and then you mentioned TikTok. Like, the social media landscape requires music to not only, it's increased the memeability of music. It's like, yes, it's an avenue for music artists to create and be found, but it's also like trying to, like, so many musicians are trying to craft a TikTokable snippet that either becomes memed itself, or they can sit in the background in order of so many different videos to be able to be discovered in that way. But then the other thing is that it's contributing to overall impatience. Like, I don't know that like pop music listeners today have the patience to sit through a guitar solo. Like, it's like, no, I want to get to the next verse. And this is exactly what you said about songs shortening. I think there's another element of this, which is like, there is the listener who is saying, pick it up. I love that you guys are doing this, but I came here for vibes, and I need voice to give me vibes. Which, that was the last thing when you just blew my mind with that, because like, I've heard a lot of artists talk about like their mumble track when they're writing a first song, which is like, you don't know the words, you're figuring out like the harmony, and you're just like recording into a recorder, just like, and you've got an idea of like, oh, it's gonna be something like whatever. That was just because I have Proud Mary stuck in my head Mary from Lady Gaga. That's where that was. But all of this is basically like, what if your mumble track were your song? What if you just left it at like syllables and feeling and sounds?
You mean Fetty Wap?
Like, well, and then I didn't want to leave out mumble rap too. Like, all of this is sitting in this big bucket of like, you don't need to hear every word right now. You need to have the scene set for you, because you as the listener are actually painting with this in your own life, in your own scene. I
was trying to explain to someone, like, because there's this debate of like, millennials don't get Ice Spice.
Mm-hmm.
And like one of my friends who maybe is even like a young Gen X was like, I love Ice Spice. And I was like, it's not even the point, actually. It's Ice Spice is an aesthetic.
Yes.
It feels like she is like performance art. It is like as popular in TikTok as it is in like Spotify. It is about like being an aesthetic. And that part to me makes me a little sad, where it is like stepping away. Like, some of my favorite songs are like 8 minutes. There's like the end of Sufjan Stevens' Age of Ads album is like a 25-minute song. It's like an album by itself. It has like a full movement, and there's like so much like happening. And I'm like sick, right? Like, I don't know, like Jack Harlow's What's Poppin' like has a great beat, but like it's just vibes, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So how would
Jess,
how would you describe just vibes?
So I would sort of double down on the idea of music as aesthetic, like music as vibes to me, which feels extremely true to me, and it actually makes me feel a little bit relieved to a certain degree, because like, we're talking about pop music, we're not talking about all music, and it's not like no music will ever have meaning anymore. I will be old man shakes fist at cloud in this instance. But like, I don't think we're going in that direction. But to me, when it's just about the intermingling of harmony, and it's about using sound to set mood, and music fundamentally as background, not foreground, to me is what music as vibes means. And I think that's what that unlocks for me too, is the streaming of music, restaurants needing to have their streaming account playing music in the background. I remember recently being in Mexico, and we were at a restaurant, and all of the music was like lo-fi electronic music, which clearly for me, I'm like, yay. But it was like lo-fi electronic covers of really not right songs. Like the songs that were being covered were like, this just isn't right. This bothers me. Like it's just because like the contrast fell off. But for the restaurant and the person that picked the playlist, they were like, oh yeah, we want something that's vaguely recognizable to people who are in the restaurant, but we want it to be in the background of their meal. We don't want it to be something, it's not like we've got people who are like playing guitars in front of you or something like that. We want it to be in the background. And I think that like more and more and more, there is a growing contingent of people who are very, very comfortable with music as background because it sells, because it actually gets you streams, and you might be able to make a living off of being the person that creates, that's always on the retail playlist for Ann Taylor Loft. I don't know.
Oh my goodness. This feels like a very roundabout full circle to the original prompt, because background listening, Muzak, elevator music, and people's associations, however misguided they are, of like jazz as being elevator music. So interesting to think of like reclaiming or redefining what that background listening, like what vibes suits the background. And maybe it just sounds so different than, you know, the 30s or 40s or, you know, a different time. And, right. And how that I think is like a totally different concept from very active, like foreground listening, like where I am intentionally waiting for the 4-minute solo, or you know what like whatever is like
recognize my virtuosity.
Yeah, exactly. It's just it's just that there is still room. There's plenty room for both of those types of use cases for music, and it's interesting. I'm now starting to understand a bit more of like those textures and the role that they play, and where maybe some of those lines are blurring of like, am I supposed to be listening to this active in between? I also think that we must give credit where it's due to Les, who provided his hypothesis on what would replace the harmonica solo. And his idea of this is the skirt, which I'm doing wrong, but that is the closest we're going to get. And he created a playlist of songs where the guy says skirt in it as the replacement for the solo. And I'm like, that's just a very interesting texture. Is that a foreground texture? Is that a solo? I don't know. Is that meant to be my vibes? Maybe.
Maybe.
I'm excited for you to go on this journey, and I will be right in the sidecar with aviator goggles going, yes, let's go faster. Go ahead and crank it. Whoa. I really look forward to this. Again, always the older guy. It happens.
Well, I think you just did an unlabeled wrap-up corner, although if you had any additional wrap-up corner thoughts that you wanted to add, we'll make sure we give room for that.
The unwrap up corner?
I think that's what that was.
Let's talk about the difference between Olivia Rodrigo's driver's license as her first launch track compared to her album, and where one exposed more vulnerability.
Club that man. Ma'am, this is a Walmart.
Sir, this is a Wendy's.
What?
Critical Nonsense is a Sylvain production.
Brought to you by Quincy Jones's Ingenuity, which basically gave you every song that you ever liked ever. Mwah!
I'd like to take this opportunity to thank my favorite co-hosts, Aaron Powers and Joey Kim.
Oh my goodness. And me, on behalf of we, need to thank our executive producer, the one, the only, the to our Jess Vander. Yeah. Oh, right. I have to do another one. We'd also like to thank sound engineer and the man who really helps me understand which sine curve is supposed to sound the way it looks, Alex Contel.
Thanks to our programming, why did I say it like that? Our programming coordinator and embodied jazz solo, Les Jacobs.
Man, and then if we can just give a standing ovation to the production help that comes from Sarah Gilbert and Nora Mestrich and Les Jacobs.
Nope.
Nope. Just the first two. We'll thank Les later. Then we'd be happy.
Him, but that's
Damn it.
okay.
I'm sorry. It's really hard, guys. Credits are hard.
As always, sorry, Les.
Man, sorry. Woo.
Special thanks.
Goldfish, who have the exact same length of memory that I do, basically.
The snack that smiles back. Goldfish.
It's true. Really good.
Special thanks to the harmonica. It works both ways.
If you like breathe in real fast, you've got a concert. And as an asthmatic, I tried that for years.
The accordion of the mouth. As an asthmatic, I'm sorry about that.
It's all good.
Special thanks to whom artists that Dolly.
Yeah, I mean,
Yep.
So Dolly is always wonderful in saying that, like, she's, what do you have to say that Whitney Houston's version is more popular than yours? And she's like, I feel great. She's made me rich. Keep going. Like, this is like Dolly in one sentence. Like, come on, let's build people up and recognize, like, this is all good. But to that end, I do want to thank every producer that was involved in developing the Bodyguard soundtrack, because listening to that this morning again from top to bottom, I mean, every Whitney song is a banger, with the exception of the gospel, Yes, Jesus Loves Me, kind of a snoozer. But all the rest are like, oh, like, I know every word, so thank you for making that decision. That changed lives. It's huge.
Beautiful. Wow.
Oh, I think that is it for this week, but I did quickly want to thank guitar soloists everywhere. Don't stop believing in what you do. It's a really good one. Yeah. That mouth guitar that you just made, I was referring to.
That's what I have. Okay, thanks so much. Talk to you next time.
Bye. Bye. I guess I do always say goodbye that way.
Oh, sick. I didn't record any of this.
Cool. Alex did. It's all good. I've done this. I think I've only done this in this group, as a matter of fact.
Did you record it, Alex? Because I don't see the recording button. All right, great.